The sun hung low over the blood-red dunes, casting long shadows across the scorched battlefield. Smoke rose in ragged columns from charred wreckage, and the scent of plasma burns mingled with that of smoldering flesh. Silence clung to the air like dust, broken only by the distant drone of patrolling gunships. Victory, they called it. Commander Darius Vex dismounted from the armored crawler, his boots crunching against the brittle sand. His face, grim beneath a sun-scorched brow, betrayed no sign of triumph. Around him, soldiers hooped and hollered, slapping backs and shouting crude jokes. For them, it was another war won. For him, it was just another weight added to a growing burden. He made his way toward the command tent, the scorched ground littered with broken armor and spent cartridges. A junior officer intercepted him near the entrance, saluting stiffly. "They're waiting for you, sir." Darius brushed past without a word. Inside, the tent was dim and stale, its interior buzzing with the hum of cooling systems. At the center stood General Morrow, flanked by ranking officers and 2 alien guards in powered exosuits. Between them, shackled and silent, knelt a woman unlike any Darius had ever seen. Her skin was a pale blue, faintly luminous under the tent's lights. Long, tightly braided hair fell over her shoulders like golden vines. She wore no armor now, only the tattered remnants of ceremonial robes, stained with sand and blood. Her gaze, however, was unbroken, sharp, unflinching, and cold as Arctic glass. General Morrow turned as Darius approached, his broad frame casting a long shadow. "You've done well, Vex," he said with a rare, toothy smile. The siege was quicker than command expected. Efficient, clean. Darius offered a curt nod. "We lost good men, as we always do." Morrow gestured to the kneeling alien. "This is your reward. A noble class captive, one of the last. She's yours." Silence settled like a blade drawn in a crowded room. Darius looked from Morrow to the alien woman, then back again. He wasn't sure what disturbed him more, the casualness of the offer or the way the officers around him accepted it without hesitation. "I didn't ask for a reward," he said quietly. "And that's what makes you worthy of one," Morrow replied. "You don't have to take her if you don't want, but you should. Symbolic, you see, a gift of loyalty, a reminder of who won and who serves now." The woman hadn't moved. Her posture was straight, her expression unreadable. Not defiant, not submissive, just waiting. Darius stared at her a moment longer, then nodded once. "Unbind her." Morrow's brow rose. "You sure? She doesn't need chains." The general chuckled, but waved a hand. The alien guard stepped forward and released her bonds. Her wrists, ringed with bruises, fell limply to her sides. She didn't speak, didn't even flinch. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Darius led her to his quarters at the edge of the outpost. The walk was silent but heavy. Soldiers stared openly. Some laughed. Others whispered. "She has a name?" Darius asked as the gate shut behind them. She looked at him for the first time. Really looked. Her voice, when it came, was soft and guttural, shaped by an unfamiliar tongue but perfectly clear. "Ilari." He nodded once. "I'm Darius. I know who you are." He gestured toward the main room, sparse and functional. Weapons on the walls, a ration pack on the table, bunk against the far wall. One chair. "You'll stay here for now. You're not a prisoner, but you're not free either. I'm not sure what you are." Ilari stepped past him without a word, examining the space with quiet disdain. She touched nothing. She sat on the floor, legs folded beneath her, and closed her eyes. Darius watched her, uncertain. She wasn't what he expected. He wasn't sure what he had expected. "You hungry?" he asked. No response. He left her there and returned to his reports, fingers sluggish on the terminal. Numbers, losses, projections, all meaningless now. His mind kept drifting back to her, how calm she'd been, how unreadable. She hadn't begged, pleaded, or resisted. It was as if she were simply enduring. When he finally rose hours later, she hadn't moved, still seated, still silent. "Do you understand what this is?" he asked. "What they've done by giving you to me?" Her eyes opened slowly, fixed on him with startling precision. "I am aware. They think I own you." She tilted her head. "Do you?" Darius exhaled. "No. Then it does not matter what they think." He said nothing. The room felt colder somehow, or perhaps just clearer. Days passed. She remained silent most of the time, but never passive. She watched everything, his routines, his orders, the way he treated his soldiers. She didn't flinch when others barked at her or tried to provoke her. She simply stared them down until they backed off, muttering. Darius never raised his voice to her. He never gave her commands either, though he found himself speaking to her as though she were part of his world. Briefings, updates, musings. He shared them all aloud, unsure she listened. One night, after a long patrol through the western ravines, he returned to find a map spread out on his table. He hadn't left it that way. Ilari stood near the corner, arms crossed, eyes on a highlighted zone. "This route here," she said, voice like wind over stone. "You're exposing your flank." He froze. "You speak our language." "I learned." "You knew all along." "I did." He approached the table, eyes on the map, not her. "Why speak now?" "You finally said something worth answering." A long silence stretched between them. "You were a warrior?" he asked. "I still am." "And yet you don't fight." She looked at him then, a flicker of something raw behind her eyes. "You think survival is not a fight?" The words hit harder than he expected. He nodded slowly and turned back to the map. "I'll revise the patrol." That night, she didn't sleep on the floor. She still refused a bunk, but she moved closer to the warmth of the fire grate. Progress, he thought, or perhaps just caution. They spoke more after that. Brief exchanges, mostly tactical. She offered insight into her people's tactics, understanding of the terrain, weaknesses in human systems. He knew she wasn't doing it for him. She was doing it to survive. But something in her tone, in the way she occasionally waited for his response, hinted at something deeper. One morning, a transport brought reinforcements to the outpost, loud, brash young men eager to mock and test boundaries. One of them, a private named Rourke, made the mistake of cornering a lorry near the mess hall. Darius found them seconds too late. She stood over Rourke's crumpled form, his arm twisted unnaturally. Blood ran from his nose, and she hadn't even drawn a weapon. "Explain," Darius said, breath tight. "He tried to touch me." A nearby sergeant scoffed. "She's a slave commander." He was within rights. "No," Darius said. His voice was cold and final. "She is under my protection. That's the end of it." That night, he brought her a meal. They sat across from one another in silence, the firelight dancing on the metal walls. She studied him for a long time, then finally spoke. "You are not like the others." "I used to be. And now, I don't know what I am." She nodded, slowly. "Good. That means you are becoming." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. The air between them no longer felt like a battlefield. Outside, the wind howled over the dunes. Inside, something else stirred, uncertain, cautious, but Darius stood at the edge of the observation platform, staring out across the pale expanse of the desert. The wind had shifted, bringing with it a strange stillness that unsettled him. Days had passed since the incident with Private Rourke, and while the soldier's arm had been mended, the murmurs it sparked had not faded. The outpost buzzed beneath the surface with a tension Darius couldn't ignore. Behind him, Boots approached, measured, light. He didn't need to turn. "They're afraid of you," he said. Ilari stepped up beside him, her arms folded, golden braids stirring in the dry breeze. They were never comfortable. Now they're simply reminded. Darius gave a short nod. "It's not just you. Command's been silent. Too silent. We haven't had a transmission in over 30 hours. Her gaze shifted from the horizon to him. "That is not coincidence." "I don't believe in coincidence anymore." There was something building, an undercurrent in the dust and silence. And it wasn't just the unease among the men or the tension in the air. It was Ilari. She had changed. No, not changed, revealed. She had become more vocal, more engaged. She questioned his decisions, not with defiance, but precision. She pointed out flaws, improved defenses. The men saw it, and though they muttered about it, none challenged her again. Her presence had evolved from tolerated to necessary, though no one would admit it out loud. But Darius knew. He saw the difference in how patrols moved, how the perimeter scouts adjusted their sweeps, how even the mess hall grew quieter when she entered. She was an alien, a captive, and somehow the spine of the outpost had begun to curve subtly toward her presence. And still, she spoke little of herself. That night, the outpost lost power for 17 minutes, just long enough to draw every soldier to alert. Emergency lights flickered to life, and the backup generators thrummed against the silence. When it came back, a message awaited in Darius's terminal, a brief encrypted missive from High Command. Reinforcements delayed. Hold position. No further civilian evacuations authorized. He read it twice, jaw tight. Ilari watched from the doorway. "They're not coming, are they?" she asked softly. Darius met her eyes. "They're coming, just not for us." She stepped inside, gaze flicking to the message on the screen. "You know what this means. Consolidation. Resource prioritization. We're being left behind." "No," she said, voice cool. "You are being tested." He frowned. "Tested?" "They want to know what you'll do. If your loyalty lies with their silence or with your truth." Darius leaned back, rubbing his temples. "I can't act on suspicion." Ilari stepped closer. "You already are. You just won't admit it." Later that week, the outer sensor grid pinged an anomaly, an energy signature too precise to be weather, too unstable to be one of their own patrols. Darius led the recon team himself. Ilari at his side, both armored and silent in the drop shuttle's hum. The desert offered no cover, but the signal came from a ridge beyond the salt flats, an area recently vacated after hostilities ended. They reached the site under a blood-orange sky. What they found wasn't a scouting party or a malfunctioning beacon. It was a buried transmitter, alien in design. Ilari knelt beside it immediately, fingers brushing the etched alloy. Her face shifted, recognition then hesitation. "This is ours," she said. "Not a weapon. A call." "A call to what?" Darius asked. "To the ones who haven't surrendered." He ordered the perimeter secured and the device transported back. Ilari remained silent for the rest of the flight. Tension coiled in every line of her frame. Back at the outpost, Darius confronted her. "You knew what it was." "I suspected. And you didn't tell me." "Would it have mattered?" she snapped, tone sharper than ever. "Would you have destroyed it, reported it, or buried it deeper?" Darius stared at her. "You think I'm like them." "I think you are afraid to stop being like them." Silence dropped between them, thick and choking. She turned away. "I will not apologize," she said. "That signal was a thread, a whisper in the dark. My people are not extinct. Some survive, and I will not be the reason they die unheard." He stepped forward. "You still believe in them, don't you?" She turned, her eyes ablaze. "I am them." Darius felt the weight of her words settle into his bones. This wasn't just a signal. It was a choice, one that might break everything. The next morning, he didn't report the transmitter. Instead, he buried it in the comms logs under a false diagnostic label. If Command was watching, they wouldn't know. That night, Ilari sat at the fire again. She didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, her voice was quiet. "Why did you protect it?" He didn't look at her. "Because I'm tired of watching people vanish for the wrong reasons." She nodded slowly. "Then we're the same." "No," he said, "but maybe we're heading in the same direction." Outside, the wind picked up again, scattering fine sand across the metal decks. Inside, something fragile had been acknowledged. Not peace, not alliance, but something like trust. And that, Darius knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. The storm hit just after midnight. Winds roared over the desert like a living beast, shaking the outpost to its foundations. Red sand blasted across armored windows, reduced visibility to nothing, and buried the outer cameras in a matter of minutes. The generators sputtered once, then stabilize, but the sense of security they offered felt thinner than usual, fragile and borrowed. Darius stood alone in the operations room, the hum of static from the comms panel louder than it should have been. Across the table, Ilari watched him with that same unreadable calm, though even she stood more rigid than usual, her fingers pressed to the edge of the console. "There's no way this is natural," Darius said, glaring at the storm model. "The timing's too perfect, too surgical." Ilari nodded. "It is a cover." "For what?" "Extraction, or infiltration, depending on who you believe it's meant for." Darius stared at her, thoughts racing. They hadn't spoken of the transmitter since he buried it in the logs. He hadn't asked her what it broadcast. She hadn't offered the answer. But now, the consequences of that silence were clawing at the gates. The outpost was understaffed. The backup reinforcements command had promised never arrived. No updates, no explanation. They were cut off, and now, something was moving under the cover of chaos. Darius turned to the internal monitors. Double the perimeter patrols. Everyone armed and armored. "I want no one alone. If they're coming, I want us ready." Ilari didn't move. "You assume it is they." He met her gaze, something brittle in his voice. "Then tell me who it is." She hesitated. It was the first time he'd seen her unsure of what to say. "There are those among my people," she began slowly, "who do not recognize surrender, who view captivity as an unforgivable stain." "You think they're coming for you?" "No," her eyes hardened. "I think they're coming for retribution. For everyone who allowed me to be handed over like a trophy." The room chilled. Darius clenched his jaw, fists tightening at his sides. "How do we stop it?" Ilari tilted her head. "That is not a question of force. It's a question of choice." Before he could ask her what she meant, the emergency klaxon blared. Red lights strobed against the walls. A voice barked through the intercom. "Contact on the west perimeter. Unidentified hostiles. Multiple signatures." Darius and Ilari sprinted to the watch deck. Through the haze of sand, they could see them. Figures moving with unnatural precision, cloaked in refractive armor that bent light around them. Alien, silent, armed. Darius grabbed the nearest comm unit. "All squads, engage with caution. These aren't raiders. I want them disabled, not slaughtered." The firefight erupted in staccato bursts, flashes of energy lighting up the storm. The outpost defenses, though limited, held well enough at first, but the attackers weren't reckless. They were coordinated, surgical. They weren't here to win a war. They were here for something specific. Darius knew exactly what. He found Ilari near the command lift, already checking her blade. A long, curved weapon made of alien alloy that shimmered in the dim red light. It hadn't left her possession since she arrived, but she'd never drawn it until now. "They'll make it to the inner wall," she said without fear. "They won't stop until they reach the command level." He nodded. "Then we stopped them there." Together they moved, side by side, through narrow corridors now echoing with gunfire and shouted orders. Soldiers stared at Ilari but didn't question her. Not anymore. Not after the last few weeks. Whatever she was, they knew she fought with Darius, not against him. They met the enemy near the central corridor. 5 of them, cloaked, masked, moving like phantoms. One stepped forward, weapon lowered, and spoke in her language. Ilari replied, voice low, tense. Darius kept his weapon raised. "What did he say?" he asked without looking away. "They came to take me back." "And you?" "I told him I don't belong to anyone." The leader made a gesture, sharp and dismissive. Ilari moved before the first shot rang out. She was faster than Darius had ever seen, faster than any human. Her blade carved arcs of blue light through the air, striking with elegance and lethal grace. Darius fired at the flanks, forcing the enemy to split. They moved like liquid, their formation adapting instantly. Still, the pair held their ground. Darius took down 1, 2, then a third collapsed from a silent strike Ilari delivered to its throat. The last 2 retreated, vanishing back into the smoke and wind. It was over in minutes. Silence reclaimed the corridor. Breathing hard, Darius looked around at the bodies. They'll regroup. Ilari cleaned her blade with a scrap of cloth from one of the fallen. They won't return tonight, she said. They got their answer. Darius faced her. And what was that? That I'm not theirs anymore. She looked at him then, as if truly seeing him for the first time. Her expression shifted, less guarded, more open, vulnerable. You could have turned me over, she said. Let them take me. You still can. He shook his head. That would make me one of them. I'm done being that man. Her gaze lingered on him, the firelight flickering in her gold-ringed eyes. I believe you. That night, the storm finally passed. The wind died, leaving silence and wreckage in its wake. Soldiers moved through the halls with fresh purpose, clearing bodies, reinforcing barricades. Whispers of what had happened already spread, of how the alien woman had fought beside their commander, not against him, of how she might have saved them all. Darius sat alone on the lower deck hours later, watching the desert return to stillness. His body ached, his mind raced, and yet there was a strange peace in him now, tenuous but real. Ilari approached quietly. She sat beside him without a word, shoulder just barely touching his. For a long while, they just sat in silence. Then, quietly, she said, "There's another signal, one deeper in the wastes. Buried, forgotten, but not broken." Darius turned toward her. "A sanctuary?" "Perhaps," she said, "or a grave." He studied her. "And you want to find it?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. And he knew, in that moment, that he would go with her. The sun rose blood-red over the desert, casting long shadows across the dunes as the outpost fell behind them. Darius and Ilari traveled light. No official escort, no recorded mission. To command, they were still at post. In truth, they were venturing into the heart of disputed territory, guided only by a half-decoded signal in Ilari's memory. Their rover bucked over rough terrain, the engine groaning as they climbed an ancient ridge of fractured rock. Ilari rode in silence, gaze fixed on the horizon, as if searching not for a place, but a feeling, an echo. Darius watched her from the corner of his eye. Her posture had shifted. She wasn't tense, exactly, but she was listening. She had been ever since they had left, like a wire stretched taut between past and present. "Still sure it's not a trap?" he asked. Ilari glanced at him, then back at the sand. "It may be, but if it is, it was meant for me alone." He tightened his grip on the controls. "Then we spring it together." She said nothing, but her hand brushed the hilt of her blade, resting at her hip, and didn't move away. The terrain grew strange the farther they went. Crystalline outcrops rose like jagged teeth in the sand, pulsing faintly with bioluminescent veins. Structures, too, half-buried towers, rounded and elegant, unlike anything built by human hands. The remnants of her people. By late afternoon, they reached a canyon, narrow, sunless, humming with latent energy. Ilari stepped out first, boots crunching softly on scorched stone. She closed her eyes, tilted her head, and spoke a word in her language. The sound was like a key turning. The canyon responded. A section of rock shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a narrow tunnel. Darius followed without question, rifle at the ready, every instinct on edge. They descended in silence. The walls were lined with unfamiliar carvings, glowing faintly as they passed. Stories, perhaps, warnings, or memories etched into time. At the end of the passage lay a chamber, tall and circular, the air still and heavy. At its center stood a console, half buried in dust, yet unmistakably active. Ilari approached it slowly. This is one of the old relays. They use it to communicate across the stars. Darius stepped closer. Can it still reach anyone? She placed her palm against the surface. A series of lights flickered, then stabilized. The room vibrated faintly, like a breath drawn after centuries of silence. "It can now," she said. Darius circled the chamber. "Then what happens if you send a message?" She hesitated. "If anyone is still out there, they'll come. And if it's the wrong ones, then we'll know where they stand. And so will I." Darius stopped. "What exactly do you plan to say?" She turned toward him, expression unreadable. "The truth. She activated the console. Holographic symbols projected into the air, shifting through dialects and frequencies until one aligned. Her voice followed, clear, resonant, powerful. I am Ilari, daughter of the fallen, forged in exile. I speak from the hand of captivity, now free by will and war. If you hear this, know I am not your prisoner. I am not your shame. I am your warning and your invitation. Come, if you still remember who we were. The message ended. The console dimmed. Darius let out a slow breath. That wasn't just a call. That was a gauntlet. She nodded. It had to be. They spent the night in the chamber, neither sleeping. The silence wasn't empty. It thrummed with the weight of what they'd done. Somewhere, now, someone knew she had survived, that she had spoken, that someone had stood beside her when she did. By morning, the signal had been answered. A projection flared to life, grainy, distorted, but undeniably real. A face emerged. Male, alien, familiar to Ilari by the way her breath caught. He spoke in her tongue, but the translation streamed to Darius's HUD. Ilari, you survived. We feared the worst. There are few of us left, scattered and hunted. But we hear you. We are coming. The image vanished. Ilari stood frozen, eyes burning with something between hope and dread. Darius stepped forward. Friends. She didn't look at him. I don't know. They returned to the surface by midday. The air felt different now, charged, as if the desert itself knew the shape of what had changed. Darius stood by the rover, while Ilari lingered by the canyon mouth, eyes closed to the wind. They'll come, she said softly. He nodded. We'll deal with it when they do. She looked at him then, really looked. You know what this means, don't you? That I've officially abandoned every military regulation I ever swore to uphold? She smiled, faint but real. It means you've chosen a side. He held her gaze. I chose a person. For the first time, there was no barrier between them. No language, no protocol, no chain of command. Just two beings caught between worlds, holding on to each other in the face of whatever came next. The rover engine roared back to life. And far beyond the horizon, stars began to shift.